What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be all about cold weather riding gear. As y'all know, I typically find myself riding through colder climates more often than not, and y'all are always asking me in the comments how I stay warm in some of those chillier temperatures, especially on long haul days. So in today's video, I'm going to go ahead and go over some layering tips as well as some gear recommendations with some stuff that I use, some stuff that I don't use, but some other people really love, and hopefully you guys learn a couple things so that y'all can stay warm as well. So let's get into it. For those of you that are new here, I did just want to introduce myself really quick. Hi, I'm Stacy. I've been riding for 15 years or 300,000 miles, whichever way you want to look at that. I love motorcycle touring. I pretty much started riding long distance on my motorcycles within the first 6 months of owning my first bike. Actually, within a month, I started taking long distance trips, which at the time were only 150 miles. But they quickly transpired into 400, 500 mile ride days, and I've just kind of never looked back. I've also been riding cruisers mostly for the last 15 years, but in the last handful of years, I've also started dabbling in the adventure bike world. So I do a little bit of off-road riding, but I'm definitely a noob in that regard. So with all that being said, most of the gear that I'm going to be talking about in this video relates to some of my cruiser riding background, but a lot of this stuff is transferable to adventure riding and adventure touring for those of you who follow me from that part of my channel. Some of this stuff will relate. I do wear some of this stuff on both types of bikes. It really just depends on the type of riding I'm doing. And speaking of riding gear, today's video is going to be sponsored by my friends over at J&P Cycles. J&P Cycles has been keeping the riding community on two wheels for the last 45 years, and I've been a customer of theirs for at least 10 of those. If you want to check out any of the riding gear I use that maybe I didn't mention in this video because I use it in the summer months or just at different times, or you want to see some parts that I have on my Lowrider ST, I do have a gear page over on jmpcycles.com, which will be linked in the video description as well as up here in the cards. So what exactly is cold weather riding? I feel like this is such a relative term, but I feel like it is important to talk about before we dive any further into this video. Personally, for me, I can ride down into the 20s and teens, but I also know people who have no interest in riding in anything under 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's completely okay. If that's where you're comfortable stopping, that's completely fine. You just need to know what you're comfortable getting into. With the right gear, you can totally ride down into the teens and 20s, but you're going to need the right gear to do that, which I will be talking about in this video. On the other hand, it really just depends where you live in the country. You can definitely find snow and 30-degree temperatures year-round throughout the United States. I have definitely found 30-degree temps and snow in the Colorado Rockies in June. I've definitely been chased by a snowstorm out of Wyoming in September, and I've also seen snow in Michigan in October. So it really just depends where you are, but it definitely isn't limited to just the standard winter months. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and start talking about all the layering tips and gear that I use. So the first piece of gear that I tend to put on whenever the temperatures start to drop below 50, 55 degrees is going to be base layers. Base layers are going to be anything that's directly touching your skin, because this is going to be the layer that is going to be retaining a little bit of your body heat. Insulative layers are more like your mid layers, but that base layer really does a great job keeping heat close to your body. I personally prefer wool base layers, but you can also get synthetic base layers. Wool base layers are naturally moisture wicking. They are also odor resistant, so I can keep them on for a week straight on a road trip, and I don't really have to worry about getting them washed anywhere, which is really convenient because a lot of times I just don't find myself near a laundromat. For those of you from Texas, we know those are actually called washaterias, but the rest of the world goes crazy when I use that word, so I'll just call it a laundromat. My go-to base layers are made by Smartwool. I really like their classic thermal long sleeve as well as their bottoms. And I also have a handful of different pairs of their socks. The thickness of my socks honestly just depends on how cold it is outside. Some days I don't need super thick socks. Some days it's nice to have those. But either way, wool socks are also really nice because you can wear them for multiple days and they don't get stinky. So I really prefer to wear those as well. But the one key thing that a lot of people I think forget about when trying to stay warm on a motorcycle is keeping their neck warm. We lose so much heat through our necks on bikes because it is so exposed. So this is where a neck gaiter comes in. And as y'all can see here, thanks to my little collection, I have a lot of different neck gaiters, and they're not all made equally, but I do have favorites, so I'm going to talk about those. So one of the first things that I want to mention is that there is a difference between hot weather neck gaiters and cold weather neck gaiters, and while something is better than nothing, having a neck gaiter that is designed to retain body heat when it's cold outside is going to work so much better than something like this that is going to be meant for hot weather riding. This is going to be my axial neck gaiter. This is available through J&P Cycles. It's one of their in-house brands. So this is actually pretty budget friendly if you're looking for something for warm weather. But it's made out of a material that is meant to basically pull moisture off your skin as well as allow it to be breathable. So it kind of keeps, the sun off your neck and all of that fun stuff. But what it doesn't really do is insulate you. So like I said, while this is better than nothing when it's cold outside, I would be looking for something that's a little more fleece lined and wind blocking. Now this isn't motorcycle specific. This is made by Outdoor Research. There's the little logo right there for y'all. I use this on and off the bike. I also do a lot of hiking and just outdoorsy things. So I have a lot of things that I kind of double dip in for motorcycling. And this is one of them. Lastly, this is the one that y'all see me wear a lot on this channel, and this is a little leopard neck gaiter that I got on Etsy like 5 years ago. So it's nothing crazy, but it was kind of a surprise when I got it in because it's just so soft. I don't know what this girl used as this material, but I bought it in 2020 when everyone was buying masks and things, if you know what I mean. And it just so happened to be made out of like the best material ever. So I just keep it on my bike at all times. And for the most part, it does retain heat pretty well. I will say in the summer months, sometimes I wear this, but it is honestly a little too hot. And that's when I pull out this one here if I end up needing it to just kind of keep the sun off my neck. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that because I knew y'all would ask because y'all see it in a lot of my content. But yeah, long story short, I think base layers are super important and I think a lot of people overlook them, and neck gaiters especially are something that if there's one thing that I could recommend that you just always keep on your motorcycle, it's one of these. Just keep one in your bar bag or keep one in your saddlebags. You just never know when you're going to use it. And they really do help keep you warmer. Something I did want to talk about really quick before I move on to mid layers is going to be balaclavas, because some people do really like balaclavas while riding motorcycles. I personally just don't. I don't have the room inside my helmet to add that extra layer on top of my head. Unlike neck gaiters, if you're unfamiliar with balaclavas, they do go all the way over your head and cover your nose. It's just too much extra material inside my helmet, so I personally don't wear them, but it might be something that works for you. So moving on to mid layers, I'm gonna try and keep this as simple as possible, but it is gonna kind of be split into two different topics. So mid layers are gonna be your insulative layers. These are going to be things that are made out of some kind of insulative material, also hopefully wind blocking. Some people prefer fleece mid layers. I personally prefer to just wear something with synthetic or down insulation materials, but everyone's different. Now on the lighter days when it's 55 degrees outside and I'm just going for a 45-minute ride with my friends, I'm probably just gonna throw a hoodie and a windbreaker on underneath my leather jacket. It's not that crazy, but on longer distance rides, something that I have to really consider is packability, because I need things that are going to fit on my bike when I'm not wearing them. So pack size is huge for me. So I have two different mid-layer jackets, and one of them is motorcycle specific, and it is actually very budget friendly and works really well. It is the Axial Block mid-layer jacket from J&P Cycles. I got to test this out on my recent trip up to Michigan, where sometimes the highs during the day was 40 degrees, and I loved having that jacket. I pretty much kept it on for a week straight, and it was super, super warm. It's only $100 as of the time this video is being published in 2025. I genuinely was impressed with it, especially for the price. Another nice thing about it is that it does pack up into itself and it gets pretty tiny. So again, packability is a huge thing for me, and it is nice that it just does get really small. One thing I wish this jacket had was a little bit of a neck or collar on it, kind of like the Patagonia Nano Puff, but for $99, you really can't beat it, and there's just not a lot I can complain about because it is a good deal for the price. Another jacket that I have is the Arc'teryx Cerium down jacket. This one is a lot more expensive, but it is something that I also wear off the bike. I don't wear this one too much on my motorcycle because it is super expensive, and it has a hood. That is one thing that I did want to mention and why I brought this jacket up. If you're looking for something to specifically wear on the bike, consider buying a jacket that doesn't have a hood attached, because it does affect your mobility to move your head left and right or up and down when you're riding. And that is something that a lot of people begin to talk about as they begin to add layers to their kit is that they just start to feel like, you know, a Michelin man and you can't move around on your bike. So yeah, if you're thinking about adding something to your kit to stay warm, definitely look at jackets that don't have hoods. So the second half of this mid-layer conversation is going to revolve around heated gear, because realistically, if you're someone who wants to ride in temperatures below 40, 45 degrees more often than not, especially if you're someone like me who just gets cold a little bit easier than the average person, heated gear might be life-changing for you. I always think about my heated gear kit and I just constantly think about all of the years that I was stubborn and I didn't want to spend the money on it, and honestly how silly that was, and that I should have just done it because I would have just been so much happier all of those times I was just absolutely frigid on my bike. So there's two types of heated gear that you need to be aware of if you're thinking of jumping ship and getting heated gear. And again, I really recommend it. It is life-changing and you will want to ride your bike so much more because it just makes it so much more enjoyable. But there's 7-volt heated gear and there's 12-volt heated gear. And personally, I think both options are great depending on the type of riding that you do more often than not. 7-volt heated gear, in my opinion, is really good for people who mostly just commute on their motorcycle and aren't going to need it to be heated for more than 1 or 2 hours at a time, because realistically, it's battery powered, which means that the batteries are rechargeable, but they don't last very long, especially on high heat. Some manufacturers say that on low heat, they might last for 6 hours, but in my experience with 7-volt heated gear, that's just really not the case. On the other hand, 12-volt heated gear plugs directly into your motorcycle, but with 12-volt heated gear, there's one thing to keep in mind, and that is that you have to be brand loyal. Not all 12-volt heated gear can plug directly into each other, and most manufacturers don't recommend it. So for example, I have 2 different sets of 12-volt heated gear, mostly because I've been riding for a while and working in the motorcycle industry has its perks. So I have gotten to try a handful of different things out. And so I have Gerbing heated gear and I have Harley Davidson 12-volt heated gear. Now, both are great options, however, they don't work with each other. So depending on what kind of riding I'm doing, depends on which 12-volt heated gear system I end up taking. My Harley Davidson heated gear is what I typically go for when I just want my heated glove liners and a jacket. Versus my Gerbing heated gear, I have a full kit. So I have the jacket, I have the gloves, I have the pant liners, and I also have the sock liners. So I am fully suited when I have my Gerbing stuff on, which is great. The Harley gear is more fashionable off the bike, and also it doesn't have as many wires, and that is something that I wish the Gerbing gear was like, because when I take it off, like when I have to go to the bathroom, there's just wires hanging out everywhere from the remote, and I wish it was a little bit more updated technology-wise, but it is so warm, and I do really swear by Gerbing gear. So many of you have reached out and asked me what gear I wear, and I always wear Gerbing gear when I go on longer trips. So personally for me, I swear by 12-volt heated gear, but I do think 7-volt heated gear has its place, like I already mentioned. And another thing that I haven't said yet about it is that sometimes if you're like me and maybe you struggle with circulation, so your hands get cold really easily, or maybe your feet get cold really easily, that's where stuff like 7-volt gear is also just really helpful, because then you don't have to have the jacket to plug the gloves into, or you don't have to have extra wires going through your pants to plug the socks into. There's all kinds of different connectors and things that work with 12-volt heated gear, and I know this might sound overwhelming because honestly, heated gear is kind of overwhelming to figure out. I completely understand, but 7-volt gear definitely has its place. I personally just think that it is better for shorter rides around town. So if you're just someone who's looking to keep your hands warm and you haven't found a glove yet that works for you, personally, I would try 7-volt gloves, and that's basically what I'm trying to say. So once you've figured out your base layers and once you've figured out your mid layers and whether or not you're gonna go with heated gear or if you are gonna try insulated jackets and if that's gonna do enough for you, it's time to figure out your riding gear, because this is going to be your outer layer and this stuff's pretty important. So let's go ahead and try and go through as much riding gear as possible. And we'll just start with my helmet and go down to my boots. I am running out of daylight, so I am going to have to speed through a little bit of this, but I do have some blogs on my website that go through some of my favorite riding gear, and I do gear reviews on my website as well. So be sure to check that out, especially if you find this video in a few years from now. I might be rocking totally different riding gear by then. So yeah, I'll be sure to link all of that stuff for y'all up here and down below. So my favorite helmet, especially in the winter months, is gonna be my Bell Race Star. This is kind of my favorite go-to helmet for anything out of all the helmets that are back here on this wall behind me. If there's one helmet that I had to keep forever as my do-it-all helmet, it's probably going to be my Race Star. If the Race Star is something that you're not looking for, my top tips for a full face helmet would be finding one that has closable vents as well as a shield. There are some kind of lifestyle helmets out there, like the Moto 3, for example. I do have one of those on the wall behind me that doesn't necessarily have a shield on it. And that's gonna allow a lot of cold weather to hit your face and penetrate your skin, and you're just gonna feel so cold. But yeah, to keep this short, the Bell Race Star is my go-to helmet when it's cold out, and I would highly recommend it. I should probably make a review video just on that helmet because I haven't done that yet, but there is a review of it on my blog. So moving on to riding jackets, I have two that I really like. One is going to be a textile jacket and the other is going to be leather. You definitely don't need leather jackets to stay warm when it's cold outside, but two things that you really need to consider are something that is windproof and something that is waterproof. So my textile jacket is made by Revit. It is the Flare 2. The Flare 3 is now available, but I absolutely love my Flare 2. I've had it for a few years now and it is so warm. It is also waterproof and it has a removable thermal liner inside, and it is such a great jacket. I wish that it fit me better whenever I was riding on my cruiser, but unfortunately just the ergonomics of cruisers just don't mesh well with the design of a lot of stuff that's made for adventure touring, because realistically your seating position on those two types of bikes is just very different. On the other hand, my favorite leather jacket is going to be made by Roland Sands Design. It is the Maywood. Y'all have seen me wear this jacket a million times on this channel or on my other social platforms. It is my go-to leather jacket. And one of my favorite things about this jacket is that it's waterproof. The whole jacket has been treated with some kind of waterproofing material on the outside of the leather, and 4 years later, it's still holding strong. I am never soaking wet when I get off the bike, but I will say that I do carry rain gear with me on the bike no matter what, just in case, especially when it gets colder out. So yeah. Those are my two favorite jackets. There are so many different types of jackets out there, but the key to finding a good cold weather jacket is going to be something that is windproof and something that is waterproof. And if it's not going to be waterproof, definitely carry rain gear. And in a pinch, you can also put that rain gear on as an extra layer and it will keep you a little bit warmer. The next thing I want to talk about and spend just a little bit more time on than riding jackets is going to be gloves. Because if y'all don't know this about me, I am super picky about riding gloves, like super picky. I not only have really small hands, which makes really thick riding gloves a little difficult to use and control my hand controls with, but also I am someone that honestly just cannot keep their hands warm no matter what, unless I'm using heated gloves. So I just want to say that if you're someone like me and you find yourself riding in temperatures under 40 degrees more often than not, I don't have a miracle glove for you that isn't heated, and I have tried a lot of different motorcycle gloves. But honestly, I would recommend looking into a 7-volt glove, like something from Gerbing or Fly Racing or Revit. There is a lot of different options on the market, and I would just see what fits your hand best and what works for you. So if you're looking for something that's non-heated, I do have a couple of recommendations. The first thing that I did want to talk about is a gauntlet glove. Gauntlet gloves are great because they are designed with a big cuff essentially that goes up over your jacket, sort of like this Thrash and Supply gauntlet glove. And it's going to push wind up over your jacket rather than allowing that cold air to come in. So something else that I wanted to discuss about gauntlet gloves really quick is that you want to look for something that has insulation in it. And these are two gauntlet gloves that I own. This is the Thrash and glove that I just showed y'all, and this is my Gerbing 12-volt glove. Here's the little connector for it to plug into my heated jacket. But both of these gloves definitely go up over your riding jacket once they are on to try and keep some of that wind out here. However, another thing that you want to look for when it comes to gauntlet gloves is insulation. This Thrash and Supply glove has a little bit of insulation, but not a lot. And it's hard for y'all to kind of tell just because y'all can't try these gloves on right now. But this Gerbing glove does have a little bit more insulation to it, so it is a little bit warmer even if it's not plugged in. Something to look for when you're looking at gauntlet gloves online is to look for something like Thinsulate or Primaloft as keywords in the product description to know if it has insulative properties. Now, I will say that the Thrash and Supply gloves are, for me, a cool weather riding glove. These do not keep my hands warm if temperatures are honestly below like 50, 55 degrees. I also have a pair of Odin gloves, and this is a women's cut one. I actually prefer these. However, the reason that I got the Thrash and gloves, which are men's, so they don't necessarily fit my hands as well, is because I can put a heated glove liner inside of these. And I do have the Harley-Davidson heated glove liners that plug in with the heated jacket. So that is where something like this is nice because I can kind of double dip and then use those heated glove liners. There are also battery powered heated glove liners that are out there. So again, gloves are a very personable and variable thing, and we could be here for days talking about gloves, but I'm just trying to give y'all some ideas on how to not freeze your little fingers off. So right now, my favorite cold weather glove that is not heated is going to be the Cassinis from Revit. I got these back in October, and the first time I put them on, I was going into a rainstorm, leaving Milwaukee, and I was riding up to Green Bay, and it was 40 degrees outside, and I was just like, oh my gosh, if these fail me, my hands are going to turn into literal popsicles. Turns out they didn't fail me. They are waterproof as they are advertised, and my hands stayed completely dry. And while my hands were a little cold when I got there, I was so impressed with these, and I was so stoked that I brought them on that trip up to Michigan because, as I mentioned in this video, I encountered so much cold weather on the rest of that trip, and I used these a lot. These gloves were awesome. I was so stoked I had them, and I totally would recommend someone who's looking for a glove that, you know, maybe you're looking for a glove that's for temperatures between 55 degrees and 45 degrees. These are your go-tos. I would highly recommend these. Definitely a good glove. And they do make these in a men's version as well. Moving on down to pants, this is definitely something that's going to vary between men and women, but I will say right off the bat that once again, this is where my ADV riding gear is so much more functional than my cruiser gear. Now I do have some good cruiser gear, but I will say my adventure touring pants are just, they're so much more functional, and I have so many good things to say about them. I have the Revit Tornado 3 pants, and they have a removable thermal liner, and they are so warm. I wish that it was comfortable to wear them on my cruiser. Unfortunately, it's just not. But if you're someone like me who kind of dabbles in different styles of riding, I would definitely look into adventure touring pants that have some kind of waterproof membrane and or a removable thermal liner because they work so well. On the other hand, cruiser riding gear is a little more variable. A lot of people choose to wear chaps over their regular jeans, which you can totally do. I personally don't care for chaps, and I just don't really feel like they do much. You can also get half chaps. There's a lot of people who get these, and they're kind of like leather gaiters that essentially cover from your knee down to your boot, which are really helpful. It just depends on you as a person. I don't really care for either, so I personally don't wear them. I know y'all are gonna ask, so I'm just gonna go ahead and mention it in this video. The riding pants that y'all been seeing me wear a lot over the last year are made by a company called Atwild. They are women's pants. Unfortunately, Atwild is not producing any motorcycle gear at the moment. They are on a production hiatus. Fingers crossed to see them come back in 2025, but for now, TBD. Last but not least is gonna be boots. And once again, this is just another scenario where adventure bike gear is just so much more functional than cruiser riding gear. I have two different pairs of ADV boots. I have the Forma Adventures, and I also have the Alpine Star Tech 7s. And I absolutely love both. They are both waterproof, and they keep my feet so warm. But unfortunately, they just don't really work on a cruiser. So when I'm on my Lowrider ST, or I'm on an Eagle Rider bike, you know, like a Road Glide or something else, or a Heritage, you'll see me ride those a lot. I'm probably just wearing a pair of Doc Martens because that's what I personally enjoy wearing. Sometimes I wear a taller boot, and taller boots do help break the wind on your shin very well if you don't want to wear something like a half chap. But boots are, again, going to be a really personal thing, but I would definitely recommend getting some type of boot, especially in the wintertime. I think I got through everything that I wanted to talk to y'all about. Let me know if y'all have any other questions. And as I've already mentioned multiple times in this video, there will be links to all of this stuff down in the video description, as well as in the cards up here, wherever they end up popping up on the screen that you're watching this video from. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments below, and I will see y'all on the next one. Later, y'all.